Hello and welcome back to the Oradon server tutorials. In this tutorial here, this will be the first of several in which I'm going to explain the Autocraft plugin, which is one we use to construct airships and all other kinds of flying or commandable vehicles in Minecraft. In this one here, I just want to explain some of the peculiarities of constructing particularly more complex airships in Autocraft, and in particular the requirement of contiguous blocks. So I'm just going to head out here to one of the first airships I built, as it is the least amount of stuff on the inside, so it's easy to see. This airship is of more or less traditional design, where it uses concentric rings to form the main body, and then the rings gradually get smaller towards the stern and the prow to create the teardrop shape. I mentioned that all blocks in Autocraft have to be contiguous. What that means is every block in an airship or any other aerial vehicle has to connect with all the other blocks by a straight path made from one of the 6 flat faces. Diagonal blocks are not considered contiguous. So what that actually means is, for example, I'm just going to drop some dirt blocks here. If we were to drop 3 dirt blocks like this, these 3 blocks would be considered contiguous with each other. So for example, you could pilot the one on the far right here, and it would still map the one on the bottom as part of the airship. Now if we were to get rid of this dirt block, these 2 are no longer contiguous to each other. Autocraft does not map blocks on a diagonal, which is probably a good thing, considering the mechanics of how these things work. But it's something you have to be aware of. It might not seem like a big deal, but if you start to construct gradually more complex airships, it will definitely come into play. In particular, I had some issues with that with this bigger one up here, which I'll explain in a minute. So if we go inside here, we'll see that towards the back of the ship, there's actually numerous blocks on the inside here which do not actually form part of the outer ring. And the sole purpose of this was to make sure that all the blocks were contiguous to each other. If they're not contiguous, you'll end up with, well, basically you'll just be flying part of the airship. The larger one up here that I mentioned, the first time I took it for a flight, I actually just ended up piloting the front half of it there and the bottom layer, because there were not actually any of these blocks here connected via flat face to any of the side rings. This becomes a real problem when you start shrinking the rings for either the stern or the prow of the ship, like I mentioned. So that's something you really have to be aware of with more complex airship designs. If you're doing something that's just straight squares, it's really not an issue. But in designs like this, it can become a problem. So for example, if I remove this block here, you can see that this block does not actually make up any of the external aesthetics of the ship. However, without these 2 here, and without these 2 up here, this outer ring actually has no contiguous blocks to the inside of the ship. You can take out all these here. Oh, and there actually is part of the outside. It's probably because I modified it once we were out there. But by default, there was actually a block in here, so you could take out these these ones here, and there was no issue. So that's why these inner blocks were put in, was to make sure that there were in fact flat faces going for each ring. You can do that either on the inside or the outside. I did it to an extent on the outside of this ship. If we hop back and go up here, you can see where these booms come back, and these booms create a contiguous connection between all the rings making up the back of the airship. So if you do something like this, you don't need to worry about doing it on the inside, and frankly you only need 1 block connecting anything. Like you could literally build the airship in 2 halves and have only a single cube connecting both sides. So long as it's contiguous through its flat faces, you shouldn't run into an issue.